My dear Professor, what are you up to? Apart from the ceiling.
You have no right coming in here.
May we talk?
Go away.
I wouldn't dream of it. Now, shall I come up there, or will you come down here?
All right, all right.
You've been practicing with your boots.
Of course.
That's Diana Rigg as Emma Peel in a 1967 episode of the British adventure series, The Avengers. Hi, I'm movie man Eric Houston, and like a lot of you, I went through a period of my life where I couldn't get enough of this quirky British import. Focusing on the exploits of spies John Steed and Emma Peel as they solve mysteries and stop madmen, The Avengers combined espionage, adventure, wit, and camp to create something like a high-class version of Batman. The show was the very definition of a two-hander, with Steed and Peel sharing equal footing, which was highly unusual for a male-female pairing on 60s TV. Peel was no sidekick and, in fact, quickly became the show's breakout character. Mrs. Peel didn't just break the mold. She set an entirely new one, with legions of action heroines following in her bootsteps. And while the small screen had seen strong, confident women before, none took off quite so well or so fast as Peel, thanks in large part to the confident, charismatic charms of actor Diana Rigg. Rigg started her career in the theater, fittingly in the sort of walk-on role typically reserved for male newcomers.
I carried a spear. The famous story. Most men usually carry spears. Big Butch D. Rigg had to carry a spear. And Peter Hall and I, when we meet now, we laugh about that a great deal.
The parts, of course, improved, and soon Diana was part of the Royal Shakespeare Company, appearing in plays like King Lear and Midsummer Night's Dream.
And sleep, that sometimes shuts up sorrow's eyes, steal me a while from mine own company.
After several years, though, she felt she'd gone as far as she could in that company and decided to give television a try.
But what I knew was that I was working my way up a company, had reached a certain level within a company, and it's rather like being in a family. That they see you, they give you a persona. Well, within this company, they give you a sort of certain line of parts, and I was always going to just be doing that line of parts, I thought. I didn't always want to do the classics. I wanted to extend, to learn, and so I left the company, and I did one television play, and then auditioned for The Avengers and got it.
At this point, The Avengers had already been on the air for 4 years, and producers were looking for a replacement for Honor Blackman, who had previously played Steed's partner. In fact, Rigg was not the producer's first choice. They had initially cast an actor named Elizabeth Shepard, but after filming only an episode and a half, decided to try again, and Rigg stepped into the role.
I tested along with hundreds of other ladies when Honor Blackman left. And I met them in the corridors. They were doing all the film tests down at Elstree. Thousands of ladies were passing by in black leather and all that stuff. And I thought, oh, well, give it a whirl, and went in and did my bit. And Patrick was enchanting and lovely and kind and helped a great deal. And then when I did it, the producer took me on one side and said, well, Diana, I think not. And I said, yes, I think not too. And apparently the next day they saw all the film clips and gave me the job, and 2 days later I was doing it.
Good morning, Mrs. Peel.
Good morning, Steed. The door's open.
Social visit?
That's it. Happened to be passing by. Thought I'd drop in.
The coffee's over there.
Not enough flexibility in the wrist. Wait on the wrong foot. Friendly advice.
Rigg and actor Patrick Macnee, who played Steed throughout the show's run, had instant and obvious chemistry. Here on the screen was an absolutely indelible and iconic pairing. Behind the scenes, Rigg and Macnee got along like a house on fire. Rigg has even suggested that Macnee helped her secure the role. The duo was also instrumental for much of the show's signature wit, as they quickly took it upon themselves to start creating their own dialogue, leading to much of the Avengers' trademark repartee.
A fully fledged bloom of delicate russet tints and a haunting bouquet for you, Mrs. Peel.
I sense a bribe.
Nonsense. I want you to get the first fruits of my labors.
What nasty situation have you got in store for me this time, hmm? You have your own built-in early warning system, you know. A certain look in the eye. Roses. Roses.
Roses.
Roses. Ah! The missing horticulturalists.
He was just absolutely adorable. He loved his work. Well, we had that in common. And we had a lot in accord. We wanted to do the best we possibly could. We kept on finding dead bodies in this series. So, you know, they didn't write terribly witty things about finding dead bodies. So Patrick and I decided that we'd write our own scenes when we found dead bodies. And the producers were really kind and let us do it. And we were a real team.
And that mattered, that we clicked, we got on. We had a sort of same sense of humour, and so he was instrumental in my easing myself into that part and very quickly feeling at home in it.
The name Emma Peel famously came from the producer's desire to create a character with so-called man appeal, or M appeal. But while comely, Mrs. Peel was anything but the typical television arm candy. She was cool and collected, smart, calm, and confident, and as I said before, every bit Steed's equal. Emma Peel was a forward-looking female character who would be embraced by women's lib. But that special way in which she was written, almost like a male character, stemmed from an accident. When it was created in 1961, The Avengers was never supposed to be about a male and female agent, but rather two male agents, as Steed was initially joined by Ian Hendry's David Keel. As Rigg explains, when Hendry was replaced by actress Honor Blackman, the writers didn't bother to change the way they wrote the character.
Ian Hendry left all of a sudden, and they cast Honor Blackman, who's wonderful, in the part, and they didn't change the script because they didn't have time. So suddenly Honor had all these sort of masculine attributes. She was suddenly able to look after herself, handle a gun, fight anything and anybody, and it grew. And it's not because they were way ahead of their time and clever. It was a very happy accident.
Despite, or I think more likely because, of Mrs. Peel's era-defying persona, Rigg did quickly find herself thrust into the role of global superstar, a role she was often uncomfortable with.
I was suddenly famous all over the world. Japan, Finland, Australia, all over the world.
Did you like that?
What I didn't like, and what I was totally unprepared for, was going out in public and pieces of paper being thrust under your nose. I wasn't terribly well equipped for newspaper interviews where they chat you up and put you in a certain light. That aspect of it I didn't like terribly, and I don't think I handled awfully well in those days. Yes. Yeah. And also, the fan mail started pouring in. Well, I didn't have a secretary. I didn't have photographs. I didn't have anything. Nobody told me or helped me, except my mum. I used to arrive at my mother's house and, you know, with all these things down. I eventually got photographs, and for the first, well, until the end of the series, it was my mother who did the fan mail. So there are hundreds of photographs out there signed by my mother. And she used to answer the mail, and You know, there'd be sort of impassioned young men, and my mother would write back and say, what you need is a good run round the block. And my daughter's far too old for you, and stuff like that.
Critics weren't always as kind as Diana's rabid fans, with some even targeting her physique.
Because I think every actor who's truly honest remembers their worst notice, because it actually carves itself on your soul. You live with it for weeks before you finally exercise the pain of it. And this was a gentleman in New York writing about the nude scene in Abelard and Eloise. And he said, Diana Rigg is built like a brick mausoleum with insufficient flying buttresses. Live with that one, too. Doing a nude scene once more.
Her bosses on The Avengers were perhaps even less respectful, forcing Rigg to confront a problem that's still rampant in the industry today: wage inequality.
No, I was paid less than the cameraman.
Oh,
no.
I bet he didn't wear that outfit half as well as you did.
Yeah. And so, did you fight for that, or did they eventually just wake up? Because you became a huge star as a result of that, so I guess they couldn't have done it without you as well.
Well, I don't know. It could have been somebody else, maybe. I don't know. All I know is that I found out I was earning less than the cameraman, and I said, just wait a minute. Hello? And suddenly I emerged as this rather mercenary creature who'd said it's not good enough. But sure enough, you know, the salary went up, and as the salary went up, so you were treated with more respect.
Given how iconic Rigg's Emma Peel became, it's hard to believe that her time on The Avengers only lasted 2 years. But in 1967, after appearing in 51 episodes, she departed for greener pastures.
I left, and I left. Well, there were two aspects to my leaving. One was I just really, really wanted to go on and do other things. And I knew that if I stayed, I probably wouldn't. But I didn't want to leave Patrick because I loved him. And I felt as if I was ditching him. And I can only tell you that he was wonderfully generous about my leaving. And I will always, always be grateful to him for that. He didn't make me feel guilty. He said, yes, go. You've got to go and do other things and all that. So he was a deeply generous, dear, dear man, and I grieve his passing.
Years earlier, when Honor Blackman left The Avengers, it was to take a memorable role in the James Bond film Goldfinger.
Who are you?
My name is Pussy Galore.
I must be dreaming.
It's no surprise, then, that Diana, too, quickly found herself swept up into the world of 007. But her Bond outing would prove to be a controversial one, as she joined a film that would star not Sean Connery, but Australian model George Lazenby.
Why do you persist in rescuing me, Mr. Bond?
It's becoming a habit, isn't it, Contessa Teresa?
Teresa was a saint. I'm known as Tracy.
Well, Tracy, next time play it safe and stand on 5.
People who want to stay alive play it safe.
Most of the Bond women of the 1960s were at best underwritten and at worst disposable.
From the woman's point of view, mainly the fact that the women are victims. And in our society at the moment, women are being very busy trying to prove that they aren't victims. But Ian Fleming definitely puts them in sort of subsidiary position. And Bond uses them. They are vessels either for his lust or to get to the big bad boss or something. You know, they're ciphers. They're not real people.
Rigg was drawn to the character of Tracy, though, because she was quite the opposite. A clever, dynamic woman in her own right.
You're full of surprises, Contessa.
So are you, Mr. Bond. Do you always arm yourself for rendezvous?
Occasionally, I seem to be excellent, Prawn. I'll take that if you don't mind.
You're very sure of yourself, aren't you? Suppose I were to kill you for a thrill.
The shoot, though, was arduous. Lazenby's lack of experience hampered the film and later made promoting the movie difficult. He famously fell in with the counterculture crowd and decided Bond was passé. He wore a beard and grew out his hair for the premiere and then refused offers to star as Bond in a second film.
I know why I did it. I mean, I knew perfectly well why I'd got the job. George Lazenby was ill-equipped. He was a model, male model. So I was there to sort of steer him through and give it some gravitas.
It all fell to pieces when George, oh goodness, I won't go into it, you know.
The immediate one-off status of the film, not to mention Lazenby's prickly appearance to the press, did nothing to help the film's box office or Riggs' nascent film career. An American sitcom called Diana would prove even more disastrous.
May I present my plumber?
If you don't know their name, at least get their profession.
Lady.
Why are you without your clothes?
Well, if I stand under the shower with my clothes on while I'm fixing it, they get wet.
That's logical.
Now, can I ask you what I came in to ask you?
Oh, please.
You want to take a shower tonight?
Because it was a dead ringer for the Mary Tyler Moore show. And Mary Tyler Moore had been there for years and years and years and was, you know, a national treasure. And then along comes this English woman copying very much the formula, and I was doomed.
At all. I mean, there was I, an alien in an alien society, and we didn't capitalize. When I say we, it's because, you know, I take just as much of the blame. We didn't capitalize on that situation, instead of which I became sort of transatlantic instead of being very English, and it failed. And in failure, of course, it's terribly painful, but I nevertheless learnt. I mean, I'm glad I did it. The failure was agony, but I'm glad that I did it.
There would be more film roles too, notably Evil Under the Sun and The Great Muppet Caper.
Daring.
Interesting range of emotions.
You think so? Oh, well, as you can see from this small sampling, modeling is my life. It is my destiny. I shall accept nothing less.
I can offer you a job as a receptionist.
But for many years, Diana returned to her greatest love, the theater.
All the things that matter to me most is theatre. And I have had an absolutely God-given chances in theatre, some of which I've taken, some of which I've failed at, but for the most part, I have absolutely no regrets at all.
Her television career would finally receive a long overdue revival when she was cast as Lady Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns, in HBO's Game of Thrones at age 75.
Put the pen down, dear. We both know you're not writing anything.
Ah, yes, the famously tart-tongued Queen of Thorns.
And the famous tart, Queen Cersei.
The memorable part brought plenty of late career accolades, including 2 Emmy nominations. A recurring part on a new television adaptation of All Creatures Great and Small followed, as did a substantial part in the Edgar Wright thriller Last Night in Soho.
No. I mean, I know you're not going to tell anyone else.
Dame Diana Rigg succumbed to cancer in 2020, aged 82. She left behind a legacy of memorable performances, always remaining mindful and grateful for the part those characters played in her life and career.
I have to acknowledge what I owe them, and I do acknowledge it. You know, when I leave the theatre now, around the stage door, and, you know, we're surrounded by people wanting, and 9 times out of 10, it's a photograph of the Avengers or it's a photograph of the Bond film. And I acknowledge my debt to those, the film and the series. It allowed me to do all sorts of other things.
In researching this video, I was really taken by how thoughtful and articulate Diana Rigg was about her work. She was clearly someone for whom acting truly was a craft, worthy of deep consideration and introspection. It's sad that her life ended just as the wider public had once again awakened to her brilliance. And it's a shame that we were denied the opportunity to be moved by even more of her work. But at least we'll always have the Avengers.
Give me the gun.
Back up.
Give me the gun.
Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Man Eric YouTube channel. We have lots of great videos delving into the films and television of yesteryear that I'm sure you'll enjoy just as much. I'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe, watch movies.